All right. So after those key, I have a couple of really important things I do for this project. One of them is I find fish names, okay? The other one is I put together the schedule for this thing, right? So if you have a complaint about your time slot, you gotta come to me. But the worst part is I schedule myself after the keynotes. And those guys were pretty good. So here's my who is this guy? So I've been, like Dan said before, I've been the community manager for almost 10 years now. I've worked in a lot of different places. That is me. Oh, it's not working. Oh, that is me at Half Dome. I did not climb Half Dome, but I took a picture near it. So, and then last year, before ALS, I took a sushi making course. So I'm a junior sushi master. But I was informed yesterday I need advanced training. So for ALS, some guys were suggesting some possibilities for some advanced training. So I think there was an 8-week course that was suggested. So if you have any ideas, let me know. So I just wanted to, I've shown this slide before, I think. I just wanted to reiterate, it came up during the advisory board meeting. We were talking about this concept of the potluck dinner or the French grand, fixed prix menu where you can eat what you want. People bring things, you can select what you want. And here's the thing, AGL is a world of possibilities. At CES this year, we showed, between us, showing our green machines, as you saw, and the instrument cluster expert group showing a few demos, and Panasonic showing some great demos, and EPAM, and Igalia, and AWS. All of this stuff was built from one source tree. So it still is a unified code base. But we just, with some magic from Yocto, as mixed together over the years by Jan Simon and by Scott and by Tanakawa-san, we've come up with this way to build multiple images showing multiple things at any given time with AGL. So it's a really, really interesting use case that you don't really see anybody else doing in the world. And so we've, over the years, we've driven a lot of requirements for multiple builds and things like that into the Yocto project that we've been able to make use of. Part of the problem with being third or fourth in this is that, some people, I'm not gonna mention any names, steal your slides. So, but basically, we, over the last few years, have been transforming the UCB into something different than it was a few years ago. And now with the Prickly Pike release coming out in the next couple of weeks, we'll have transitioned basically to having, instead of just one set of reference apps that are Qt-based for IVI, now we have multiple reference apps that are Flutter, Qt, and web app based for IVI and instrument cluster. You can build images for instrument clusters that are Qt-based, that are Flutter-based, that are in containers, that are in virtual machines. Same thing for IVI. You can add, a web-based system, and you'll see some examples of that out in the demo showcase, both from the AGL demo and from the demo that Renaissance is showing today or this week. So Prickly Pike. We have Prickly Pike coming up in the next, I think, August 4th now. Just wanted to, I'll skip to this real quick and then I'll go back to that one. So the M1 release ended up being a little late. One of the nice things that we do is we do a lot of testing. We do CI, automated testing in our CIOT system with Lava and Jenkins, but we also have some manual testing that's done by Eddie in Bulgaria. And Eddie, we had some features that came in late for M1, and then Eddie found some show-stopping issues for M1. So rather than release something that was half-baked, we delayed it a little bit until almost the end of June, just before we went to Prague. And so then we have some more late-coming breaking features that I'm going to talk about in a second. So we delayed M2 until next week, M3 until the week after, and then the final release to August 4th. The bottom line is we We're about a week or two late on Prickly Pike, but I'm pretty sure we're going to keep to this August 4th date. So, you know what? I forgot to upload these slides to Sketch, but I'll put them up right after this, so you can get these these hyperlinks that I have in here right from Sketch too. So we'll have the 4.0.10 version of Kirkstone in Pike. We have the new Rust. We have a much newer Rust version of 1.6.8, thanks to a Yocto mix-in layer that Scott created. Kuxa.val will be updated, has an updated version. We've cleaned up numerous package groups, and we did numerous updates to the Yocto layers throughout the tree. CIOT has a number of updates. The IVI demo, we updated the Flutter and the HTML5 demo images. VertEG, we now have the VertIO loopback stuff in there. And we have the Chromium embedded framework that's coming in as a technology demo. The kind of the last feature that's coming into Prickly Pike is actually the CEF feature. We have Gallia has been working on that. There's some initial commits that are already in Garrett. Hopefully today we'll see the final proposed commits that we'll review, and we'll have hopefully get the final review of that done on Friday during our face-to-face workshop, and so we can get that onto master for next week's M2 release. The great thing about all this, and you guys being here this week, is I think for almost every one of these topics, we have a talk. So between Jerry-san for VertIO, we have a VertIO loopback talk that'll be virtual from Virtual Open Systems. We have a CEF talk from Gallia. We have a Kuxa.val talk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a great opportunity to learn what's going on, talk to the people who are really doing the work, and then maybe getting involved yourself some more in what we're doing. Once we release the Prickly Pike release 16.0, we'll start releasing patch updates probably every 2 months or so until probably March of next year when it'll go end of life. One thing that was recently announced by the Yocto project is we've still been maintaining the Lucky Lamprey release for 3+ years now. Well, not quite, but for a long time. And that's been following the Dunfell branch, the 3.1.x branch of the Yocto project. So the Yocto project recently announced that they'll end of life the Dunfell in April of next year. We will continue to provide Lamprey updates based on Dunfell. And you can see we've already made, I think it's 14 releases on Lamprey, by far the most releases we've done for any of our versions. And then as part of that announcement, the Yocto project announced that Kirkstone, which is what we're currently following on Pike, and on Octopus, which we're doing patch releases on, that'll continue through now for 4 years through April of 26. And basically, we'll continue to do the latest AGL release. We'll continue updating the latest AGL release with 4.0 updates until Kirkstone goes end of life in 26. And we are anticipating, based on their announcement, that next year they will announce a new Yocto LTS that will run for 4 years. So we anticipate that in the spring of next year, we'll make our Quillback release, which is 18.0. 17.0. We'll continue to, like Lamprey, we'll continue to do updates on Quillback for the next 2 years beyond that, as the Kirkstone branch continues to propagate on the Yocto project. And we'll switch 18.0 to the new Yocto LTS that'll be announced in the spring. So our summer release next year, which I don't have a name for yet, I can't announce it because I haven't figured out what a good R fish name is yet. The summer release of next year will use the new Yocto LTS that will be announced in the spring. So you follow all that, I hope? So as we go through the third and fourth quarters this year, second half of the year, we'll be working on that Quirky Quillback release. And I've got some more slides to talk about what the various experts groups are doing, but anticipate that again, like I just mentioned, we'll continue Kirkstone support through the rest of the year. We'll complete the Kuxa.val data broker client updates that Scott has been working on. Chromium Embedded Framework, CEF. Right now it's going to be, for Prickly Pike, it's going to be more of a technology demo. We expect that to continue to mature through the end of the year, and we should have some reference apps available that we're thinking we might use in CES next year. The Flutter Embedder, we've talked to Toyota. They're going to continue to evolve that through the second half of the year. Joel has a talk about what's going on with that tomorrow. It'll be virtual. We have a lot of SDV stuff going on, and we have a lot of vehicle to cloud stuff going on that I'll talk about in a few minutes. So this is what our overall schedule looks like for the rest of the year. You can always check the schedule on our wiki page there. I try to keep it relatively up to date. So again, I'll show this slide, but basically we went through this process of gathering up features from each of the expert groups, from the system architecture team, and even from the steering committee. And there was a very lengthy amount of discussion and ratings and rankings by the steering committee companies. And these were the top 11. I usually do 10, but I decided 11 was better for showing what was kind of high priority this year. These are the top 11 features. And you can see basically what we're planning on doing with Quillback very much matches up with these top 11 features. Maybe the only one that we may not get done is the additional hardware for the reference sock from Qualcomm. But I think everything else we're working on pretty good. We're doing a lot of work on for the rest of the year. I really like having someone or some company identified as the project champion for each of these projects. So for SDV and for hypervisor and container type features, when I say project champions, I really like it to be someone on a company on the advisory board, because that really shows leadership by our membership, by our leading companies, our advisory board companies, and some dedication to the project. So SDV, hypervisor, containers, our project champions are Amazon, AWS, and Panasonic. Flutter is really being led by Toyota. Instrument cluster has a large number of companies working on it, but especially Suzuki and Aishin and Panasonic and Renesas. We really need to do a better job of figuring out how to get new people involved with AGL, with onboarding developers, and having a way to deploy an app to QMU or to a board as quickly as possible. So we've been talking about improved developer onboarding and workflow, and that's kind of being led by Toyota. And then we have updates to the Qt and web apps for both Instrument Cluster and IVI. So these are the active expert groups, and I'm just going to give an update kind of on what each of the expert groups has been working on and maybe how you can get involved. Each of these expert groups meets every 2 weeks via Zoom. If you love the sound of my voice, you can hear me talk at all these calls. So the system architecture team generally is responsible for the overall AGL architecture, kind of managing the release schedule, managing the roadmap on a day-to-day basis. And a large project that's recently been kicked off, when it was voted on by the steering committee, it didn't really have a natural home. It was kind of proposed by the instrument cluster team, but also has a lot of overlap with SDV. And so we decided to house this within the system architecture team. And that's to talk about RTOS usage with AGL, and how do you deploy AGL in a mixed criticality environment or in a heterogeneous environment where you've got AGL sitting next to an RTOS, and you can do that out of the box. So we've actually got some pretty, as Ms. Yama-san would say, we have some pretty heated discussions some really good discussions about this. The set's actually been having some out-of-band meetings that we've scheduled to talk about this. There's some really good architecture discussions going on there. So if this is a topic that interests you, I absolutely encourage you to join. We've had a number of companies participating, including Panasonic and Harman and AWS and a lot of others. So, this is kind of, I forgot to update this. But there's not a lightning talk later today. There's an actual real talk later today on CUXA.val and what Scott's been doing and how it'll be updated. But basically for Pike, we've completed the CUXA.val data broker, and adding that to AGL, so you can now use gRPC as the interface. We talked about the Rust mixin layer already. And App Framework was also looking at app deployment and a solution for easing developer workflow and developer onboarding for new people. One thing that's been going on within the AGL App Framework and connectivity expert groups, we merged those two expert groups this year, is standardizing the IPC as much as possible to gRPC and protobufs across the UCB. Basically, we've now replaced the legacy WebSocket-based AGL service binders. We have a standard methodology to launch new services and apps using App Launch D. We've got systemd-based sandboxing. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I think, we're, in terms of the app framework bits, we're kind of, I don't want to say done, because you're never done, but we have on this Confluence page, we have a list of things that are ongoing. I think we're on track to finish most of them this year. And what we're really going to be looking for is feedback from members who are actively using AGL and actively using the App Launch D. What are we missing? What can we add? Or do you have stuff you can upstream to us to add? So again, another great opportunity to get involved with what's going on in AGL. IVI expert group, so this is kind of old. Flutter reference apps were included in the Octopus release. We're doing some Flutter workspace automation stuff. We have a lot of updates coming in the second half of the year. In fact, Toyota has another drop coming into Garrett this week that we'll start integrating, and we'll try to figure out whether we incorporate that as a part of a patch release for Pike or wait until Quillback. But basically, the plan is to get up much closer to the tip of the tree for Flutter itself and add some support for some other backends. So a lot of exciting stuff going on there, and I think Joel will have some updates as part of his talk. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the SDV expert group. Jerry has an overview coming up right after this. Jerry is probably hoping he gets a grand introduction like I got. I'll see what I can arrange. But basically, we've got a lot of work going on there, and Unified HMI, we got our first commits, and we're reviewing those. And so hopefully we'll be able to complete that review on Friday, or at least make a lot of progress with some suggestions for how to properly get it into AGL. And there'll be a talk tomorrow about Unified HMI, as Ms. Yamasan already told us. Vehicle to cloud. So we're looking at a reference implementation for messaging between connected vehicles and the cloud. AWS is spearheading this. There'll be a virtual talk tomorrow from James Simon about what's going on there. And we've got a Confluence page on the work that's going on there. And again, this expert group meets every other week, and it's been getting a lot of traction from AWS, from Harman, and from others. So it's a pretty exciting area for work. Instrument cluster, Yamaguchi-san will be giving us an update on the EG plans this afternoon. But basically, and you can see some of the instrument cluster work that's been done in the demos that are out there. this tech showcase. That was, again, I forgot to update this. This was from the previous event from EOSS. SEAT, Jan Simon will have a talk about reproducible builds and why we need them, and they are very, very critical, especially in the automotive industry. As you want to maintain a product, maintain a device for a number of years, you need to be able to go back and a year or two later recreate that build so you can do a possible update if there's a defect found in the field. So we'll have, Jan Simon's got a pretty good talk about that later today or tomorrow. We're looking at adopting the Yocto Open Embedded Self-Test, OE Self-Test. Again, another talk about that. That's a pretty interesting area. And we've been working on Yocto check layer conformance. So there's a lot of things that Yocto has been building on and Open Embedded has been building up the last few years that we're going to take more and more advantage of to make sure that our builds are reproducible, to make sure that they're sane. And we have SBOM available now, again, as that was made available by the Yocto project. Now we have made use of it. You can get an SBOM for every one of our releases. It's in the download folder. So a lot of good work being done by Jan Simon and the SEAT team. So, do you want to, now you're really excited, you want to get involved, right? How can you're saying, Walt, how can I help? What can I do? That's a great question. So, to summarize, we've got the Vehicle to Cloud team that meets every other Monday. The SAT team meets every other Tuesday. SDV and container orchestration meets every other Tuesday as well before the system architecture team meeting. We're working on developer workflow, both in the app framework and the IVI expert groups. Documentation improvements, boy, we need a lot of documentation improvements. And you know, one thing that was suggested yesterday during the steering committee meeting is we need to do a better job of documenting the demo features, you know, what exactly is in each of our demos. I have a really, really old wiki page from the 2018 demo, I believe, that's really gotten out of date. So I think we need to make some efforts in really documenting what's in those demos so that folks besides me and Jan Simon and Scott can readily describe to people what it is that we actually have, what we're making available. So we're going to work on that in the next few months. So if you want to be part of that, there's a great presentation that Vinod did. Vinod's kind of a volunteer who's been working on his own time, improving our documentation. He did a presentation at the Berlin AMM that's available on YouTube if you want to know how to go and update the documentation. And don't think that documentation is boring, because every person who's come in and started working on the documentation has ended up spending a lot of time doing builds and testing stuff and seeing how things really work. So there's a lot of opportunities there to get involved. And then kind of the final one, our reference app design. So we've been using, you know, if you're familiar with the AGL demos, we've been using the same design for a long time. So, hey, if someone wants to improve the look and the feel of AGL and the demo apps, come talk to me. And basically, we're looking something that should be implemented or implementable if it's just more documentation in Flutter and HTML5. We'd like to make something available for CES in 2024. We've talked about having a landscape version of our IVI demo available for CES 2024. So again, if the application side and the design side is more your cup of tea, come talk to me. So one of the things that we started quite many years ago, as we were building up the first AGL CES demo, was we decided we had to have a meeting, because when you have people working in Japan and in the US and in Europe, and they're all working on a demo together, you really needed to kind of talk about what you were doing. And we started this developer call. So it's been running for quite a few years. It runs every week. You can come and you can, if you have a question, if you don't know what's going on, you can come and you can ask a question. You can see what we're working on. We'll try to get you the answer. And if we don't know the answer, we'll try to help, we'll try to help figure out what the answer is. So again, really great opportunity to meet people who are really working on the project every week. I'd say we get 10 to 20 people, depending on the time of year and what people are working on, who join us. Great opportunity to meet people. If you have questions, you're trying to get an answer to, can you join our mailing list? You can ask a question through the mailing list. You can join us on IRC. Just don't expect any help for mechanical issues. Somebody recently wanted to know how to install a rotor on a 1987 Honda or something. We can't really help you with that, but we can help you with automotive software. And so that's it for my talk. Anybody, I don't know how much time I have left, but if anybody has a question, we can try to answer it. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. No? All right. Well, thank you, everybody.